left, right.
Yo, and welcome to this episode. Tonight we're talking about daylight savings time. There's new legislation planning to eliminate daylight savings time. The question is, well, one, what do you think about that? And two, do we live in daylight savings time forever, or do we live in standard time forever? Pretty cool topic. I think this one might resonate with you if you're a morning person, if you are affected seasonally with seasonal depression. But pretty complex topic. I think you'll like it. Let me know in the comments what you think. Should we stay in daylight savings? Should we stay in standard time? Should we keep things as is? See you on the other end. This is SipTalk. Grab a drink and enjoy.
Of course, it's good.
Cheers.
Cheers.
All right, we are live. Welcome everyone to Sip Talk, episode 175. My name is Justin DiGiulio out of my basement in New Jersey, joined by James, the Bosniator Boswell out of Charleston, South Carolina. James is a philosopher, a professional referee, a bartender, and most exciting of all, an accountant. James, how are things hanging down there in sunny South Carolina?
Things are going all right. It's nice and warm down here. I think it was pretty miserable for you guys the last couple of days.
Yeah, it was below 20 degrees when I was walking today. I got about a mile walk from the car to the train, and then from the train to the office. So,
Yeah, it was like 72 today with like a light breeze and sunny skies.
Oh, sounds terrible. Is this a motorcycle day for you?
No, I have to be at work day for me. So,
Oh, so you stayed inside. You didn't leave the house today.
yeah, my mom's in town, so I've been helping her out a little bit. She's been doing a lot of yard work and making the place look better, but I've been stuck to the desk processing mortgages.
Ah, I see. So I heard you crack open a drink as we went live here. I got to ask you, what are you drinking there?
Not Bush Ice tonight. We are doing Edmund's Oast sour strawberry rhubarb. It's really
Man, you
good.
got to text me that. I was in Colorado last weekend, and I was looking for some good beer, and I wanted to find a nice sour beer, but I was actually afraid. I didn't know what I should get. So next time I'm in that place, there's no reception in this Colorado wine and liquor store. Where I was in this weird kind of area in the mountains where there was no reception at all. So, but you got to text me so I
Yeah,
can.
we'll say hi to Lisa. Sorry you can't stick around, but yeah, we got to give you the shout out for stopping by.
Oh, we
And
love
yeah, when
we
it
love
comes to
Lisa.
sour beers, this is a local beer, so it's not going to be too easy to find in
outside of
Colorado.
outside of South Carolina. So look, the phrase we were talking about, actually, we were talking about diversifying skills, and we'll expand on that later. But I wanted to share this with you. You know, the phrase "a jack of all trades is the master of none."
Hmm.
Do you know that phrase is actually, it's been hijacked? It's short. The full phrase is "a jack of all trades is a master of none, but oftentimes better than a master of one."
I didn't know that second part.
Yeah, me neither. I heard it about a year ago, actually on TikTok, and I just Googled "jack of all trades" full phrase, and that is the full phrase.
I believe it. I just hadn't heard it.
Yeah, I consider myself a master of very few. So the jack of all trades, master of none, but oftentimes better than a master of one. I get down with that a little bit more. So it sounds like we're frozen on a couple of platforms, but we will press through. It says online that this is episode 174. It's actually 175, and today we're talking about the elimination of daylight savings time. There's a new bill that actually has passed the Senate called the Sunshine Protection Act, led by everyone's favorite Marco Rubio, and they're planning to have year-round daylight savings time. So we're going to get into that and talk about what that could look like. Because
Well, I'm just going to have to say, I think it's highly irresponsible of Congress to pass such a law. Like, global warming's already a problem, and now they're adding another hour of sunlight, like, for the rest of the year. Like, how does that help the problem at all?
Well, let's get into the specifics. I have to touch
All
base
right.
before we get
Whoosh.
into the before we get into the meat and potatoes. Um, did you watch the Academy Awards over the weekend?
No, and I don't want to give what you're talking about any attention.
Well, I think it deserves our perspective because I think a lot of people have some actual, they have real feelings on this. And did you watch what happened?
Yeah, I've seen the clip.
So there's a lot of people sharing their perspective on this, and yeah, I don't really think it's actually newsworthy. I don't think it really deserves our time, but crushing other people's perspectives is something that I think both you and I can get behind.
All right, you got me sold.
Okay. I figured I'd have you sold on that. So basically, for those who missed it, and I missed it, there's a new TV show. Actually, it's season 2 of the TV show called Upload, and it's what happens is you basically download your consciousness when you die, and they put you in a simulation, which I think is pretty intriguing. And then you're in the simulation, effectively fully conscious. You can interact with the back at the real world. The real world can interact back with you basically via their cell phones or virtual reality. Remember Gigapets? Or
Like Tamagotchis?
Yeah, Tamagotchis. You had this little thing, and you would feed it and clean
Yeah,
its
you
shit
need
up.
to that. There was like the two things you could do is like give it food and then like wash the poop away.
Yeah, I think it had like 2 buttons basically. So
It's
what
crazy. Think about how much money whoever invented that made.
a brilliant. Hopefully, they didn't like continue to expand and double down. They just kind of left it at that. And we're like, we'll sell as many of these until they become unpopular. But if they started opening like worldwide enterprises to sell Tamagotchis, then
Yeah,
they
because think
probably.
about how many lines of code had to have gone into that program.
Oh my God, it's so simple. So that's what the show is like, though. So and I'll try to give you a very brief synopsis. The main character was murdered, and he's put into this place, and his girlfriend she's fucking batshit crazy, still in love with him, but she's trying to control him in virtual reality, and he lives an okay life in virtual reality in a nice hotel, but it's controlled by real dollars, and since he doesn't have much money in real life, he is dependent on his girlfriend to pay for his stay. Otherwise, he runs out of data, and then he just gets kind of real blockheady. What's that video game where
Minecraft?
like Minecraft or something along those lines? So and his data really slows down, and his world really slows down. It goes black and white. So without her feeding him money,
That
which
sounds super dystopian.
it's super dystopian, and I love dystopian movies. Actually, speaking of dystopian, this morning I walked to work. I got my head down. I look up because I'm about to cross the road, and I see 2 people, and they had the full face shields on. You know, the
Okay.
anti-coronavirus face
I
shield.
always thought that was a bit much.
It's totally a bit much, and I haven't seen them in forever. And these were ones with the sunglass.
Like, I could understand if you are a doctor or a nurse and you're in a medical setting, they made sense there. But, like,
Yeah, so blood doesn't spurt up into your eyeballs.
yeah. It makes complete sense in those settings. But if you're just, like, going about your day, and I was always in favor of people wearing masks. So, but I always thought that was just a bit much.
But the plastic, my sister
Yeah.
actually sent some up. I think in a care package at one point because she works in the hospital. But yeah, I saw these guys. They had tinted face shields on, and instantly I just thought like Demolition Man, futuristic. I thought they were like time cops coming from the future to like arrest me. And they both had their hands in their pockets, so they were kind of elbows out and just in my way because I had been looking down, and I kind of came upon them abruptly, and I was like, fuck. But real instant like dystopian future flash, Demolition Man, time cop type thing passed through my head. Either way, we're off track. We're off track a little bit here.
As is our brand.
Well, yeah, fair enough. So look, Will Smith and Chris Rock. You know, Chris Rock, ultra famous comedian. Will Smith, actor, famous for great movies like The Wild Wild West. Also,
Yeah, that's up there in the pantheon of all-time great movies.
yeah, and also music artist famous for getting jiggy with it. So we got Chris Rock and Will Smith. Now, Chris Rock, his fame for comedy, is hosting the Academy Awards. And traditionally, what they try to do is they try to get a comedian to host it. Comedians are light; they can keep things moving,
And they're good at
and
improvising.
they're good at they're good at improvising, but not much improvising is really so much needed. For the most part, they have their jokes, and just like any comedian, I don't know the last time you went to a comedy show, but most people's fear is to sit in the front row. And, usually the audience gets a bit involved and gets picked on a little bit because that's how comedians work. At least that's how they
Yeah,
work in
it's
New York
called
City.
crowd work.
Yeah. And that's how they work in New York City. And, that's my experience. A lot of big comedians have their genesis in New York City somewhere. So, Chris Rock mentioned Jada Pinkett Smith, something along the lines of, "Oh, it looks like Jada's here. She's ready for her audition for GI Jane 2." Now, for people who don't know Jada Pinkett Smith very well, I picture her in my head as a woman with a shaved head, and I can't picture her with hair at all in my head either. And then I picture GI Jane, which is a Demi Moore movie, 1997, in which Demi Moore, actress known for drama, okay, known for Saint Elmo's Fire and among other things. I think Saint Elmo's Fire. Um, but she's known for her long black hair. She actually shaved, and this is in her peak of fame, right? She shaved her head for this movie. Now you see a bald woman in the audience. You say, "Oh, ready for GI Jane 2." To me, that seems like a natural comedic strike. And I think if there was a woman who was known to have a shaved head, that would be reasonably appropriate. But apparently, she suffers from alopecia, and alopecia is hair loss. Now, I also suffer from alopecia, as you can see by the glare of the ring light here on my head. Okay.
Mm.
Uh, and
Hang on, I just got to enjoy this.
okay, so it was seen as a low blow. So her husband, now all she did was roll her eyes. Now her husband, who's been being picked on quite a bit in the media because of their open relationship, and his kind of passiveness to the open relationship, stood up, jumped on the stage, went down the walkway, and slapped Chris Rock. Now, a lot of people are saying, well, Chris Rock went too far because he made a bald joke. And other people are saying, well, Will Smith went too far because, he exchanged violence for words to defend his wife. Now, I'm just curious your thoughts on this.
It's completely inexcusable and childish behavior on on Will Smith's part. Like you're an adult, and if you truly were offended by the joke that Chris Rock gave, then there are ways that you can address it in a way that you come out looking better.
Well, yeah, but in that, now I can tell you from having spent time at the side of a lady, when your lady is disgraced or dishonored, it is your duty to not sit there and your duty to stand up, even if it means you're about to be shot. And that's,
I think that's a stupid attitude.
I also agree, but oftentimes that's what women expect, which to me is asinine. I'm not the person to make a fool of myself or make the situation bigger just for the sense of honor when it can be dealt with in private, and you be the bigger person and you deal with it on a private level. That's my opinion. I think.
Yeah, or even like if you could so he doesn't know that he's going to win an Oscar, so he doesn't know that he's going to get the opportunity to make a speech that night. But I would assume that whether he won or something or not, at the end of the night, somebody was going to ask him for an interview, and that would have been his chance to be like, "Hey, Chris Rock, it's not cool to make jokes about someone who has a disease," and then you're done and you win.
He had more than enough platform to give a comeback. I agree with you.
And he could have done it in an honorable way. Instead, he looks like a petty child.
Well, also, yeah, I mean, my thinking is if you're going to jump up on stage in the middle of a live performance and you're a 240-pound, 6-foot tall man, you shouldn't be exchanging a slap. There should be some knuckles involved, and somebody ought to be knocked off
It's
their
absurd
feet
that he
if you're
wasn't escorted out. for his
I
behavior.
I agree. I agree. And his profile obviously got him, set him aside from anybody else that might do that. But I think a slap is not. I mean,
No, but it's still assault.
it is assault. If should Chris Rock,
Well, technically battery, but
but yeah, technically battery. Should Chris Rock be the one to press charges? Which I don't think that he would.
no, he
But
didn't. He declined to.
but my thinking is, words. What happens when people have disagreements is they escalate quickly because I push you, you shove me back, I punch you, you tackle me back, right? And it just escalates and escalates. So what happened was it went from words to violence, and that's really inexcusable because it didn't need to. But I could see. I know, I think of Jada Pinkett Smith in my mind as Matrix, which is like super short hair, and I've only really seen her with super short hair. I googled pictures of her, and super short hair. And as a woman with short hair, and especially African American women, wigs are pretty commonplace. So, you know, I think I'm digging myself a bit in a bit of a ditch here. But I think should she have been that self conscious, she could have worn a wig to the event. It wouldn't have been culturally inappropriate, nor probably would anybody have commented on it if it was a serious point. So my thinking is, had she been a woman recently diagnosed with cancer, known for her long flowing locks, and somebody said, "Hey, you look like you're ready to audition for GI Jane 2," then it might have been that much more of an obscene comment.
Yeah, and so like you want to say, was Chris Rock's joke appropriate? Maybe, maybe not. But at
Well,
the end of the day, he's a comedian, and he's going to say things like that, and like you can address it and just say like, "Hey, I didn't think that joke was funny," and that's the end of it. It wasn't a personal insult. It was part of a bit.
and yeah, and that's again, they took Kevin Hart off of this a couple of years prior, because he said something publicly. And I don't even think it was maybe meant to be public at the time about him not wanting his child to be a homosexual, which, while that might be an outdated expression, I think most people want their children to be like them. And
Yeah,
that's it's becoming outdated. It's becoming outdated. But when he said it, I think it was very much in the tone of the times, and it was taken a bit out of context, and he lost what would have been something he really wanted.
yeah, and like I'm not a huge fan of Kevin Hart, but I didn't think that like him being blacklisted for that was justified. And then these most recent events just show how terrible Hollywood is in terms of policing its own and where its priorities lie. Because you can look at somebody like Roman Polanski and the fact that like he's still held in like high regard by a lot of people in Hollywood, despite him like sodomizing a 13-year-old that he drugged.
Well, like Bill Cosby.
No, Bill Cosby at least did it to adults. Like, I'm not saying that Bill Cosby's great, but like, there's a difference between, in terms of magnitude of offense, when you're doing it to a 13-year-old.
Yeah,
And I think both of them should rot.
yeah. I mean, yeah. That's bad. So I'm curious the Instagram perspective on this entirely, but and the TikTok perspective actually. So let's see. TikTok is saying they're both wrong, and they have to respect the audience. They think they own the world. They don't. They don't deserve to be there. Well, I think they do deserve to be there.
Okay,
But
you can say that they're both wrong, but one of them resorted to violence and the other didn't. So there's magnitudes of wrongdoing here, and one is worse than the other.
I'll bet G.I. Jane. So let Levrain says, I bet G.I. Jane is in the works now. I honestly, it would be a great movie. The idea of a woman who, kind of gives up her womanhood, to pursue being a female soldier, I think is actually a great story, and probably more appropriate now, given the way we view gender roles and things like that, than it was in fucking 1997, which was
Yeah,
a
no, you
long
can look
ass
at
time
Ukraine,
ago.
where
Like,
like Tons of women
25
have
years
signed
ago.
up to fight alongside the men, and not in like support or medic roles, but in frontline firing guns roles.
Also, I think it would be a huge spin on things if Jada actually took that role, because the role was originally a white woman, Demi Moore, great actress, and Jada Pinkett Smith. From what I've seen her in, from I can recall, she's not a bad actress at all. I can't think of her in any leading lady roles. Maybe I'm missing something.
Yeah, you're
Uh,
speaking a different language than I understand now.
but realistically, it could be a great role for her, and that'd be badass. A badass response to what happened. And if they had a great writer and a good cinematographer and good director, could be an awesome movie. But
All right, let's
well,
talk about the
let's
latest
get
threat
into
to global warming, which is expanding daylight savings time.
the Sunshine Protection Act, because we need to protect. It's a funny name for a bill, led by Marco Rubio, passed the Senate. It's stalling in the House. But the goal is, and this is where I get a bit confused, is to have year-round daylight savings time. So
Yeah, so what we just moved out of like 3 weeks ago, that was standard time.
that was standard time. So now with the summertime that we know, where the sunrise is 5:30 a.m., the sunset is 8:30 p.m. So late nights, that's not actually real time. That's daylight savings time. So the question is, if we're going to get into real time, it's gonna adjust your it's
Yeah,
gonna
we already
adjust.
have it about 8 months of the year.
Yeah, yeah. So we actually have daylight savings time for the majority of the year, for 2/3 of the year, and so March through October, um, and it's odd that the majority of the time that we're in is actually fake time. It's not real
Well, all
time.
time is fake.
Have you? Yeah. All. Have you watched any of these videos on YouTube where they really break down like how time works, and how the years work, and how the reset works, and how our calendar is basically like the best guesswork that happens to work out over the longest period of time with the resets like daylight savings time?
Well, I mean, if you're talking about coming up with some system of like systematizing time into a regular period of dates and everything, um, probably not the best system that we currently have. It's a kludge of the Roman calendar, and they've done all sorts of tricks to keep it regular with leap years, and then depending on like, and then there are like leap seconds that have to be added here and there. So like it's not really the best way to measure time, if
What's
that's what you mean by how time works, because there's also like the physics analysis of like how does time work when you look at physics.
Well, yeah. So when you understand how time works, especially from a physics perspective, time is basically an invention. But then when you understand how time works based on the planets moving around the sun and how the planet revolves, how the planet spins, then it gets a little more confusing. But I just so a lot of people don't actually understand how time works. We're not going to get into it right now, but I will give you a simpler example of how you conventionally understand something and how it is not at all the case. So I recently, and I think I'd heard this before, but I just watched it recently, and it's fresh in my mind, is how tides work. Most people think that the moon moves around the earth and it tracks the tides this way, and then it passes and it tracks the tides this way. In actuality, the earth is spinning, and the tides are kind of a blob of water, and the water moves, water basically stays in place, and the earth spins within that water.
It's just a frame of reference change.
And that water continues to bulge out towards the moon. The water stays here and bulges out towards the moon while the earth spins.
Well, and it's also on two sides of the planet, because on one side the pull is stronger, and then on the other side the pull is weaker. So like the farther away you are, the more like the less the water is being pulled towards the moon, so it can stay farther out. It's the two sides in the middle that are equidistant from the moon that the tides are lower.
Yeah. So look, let's get back to time change real quick because I want to talk about time change and what time would look like with this new daylight savings time year
Well, it would
year
just
round.
mean that like
So
in the
we're
winter, people are gonna have to go to work in the dark.
well in the winter a lot of times we still wake up in the dark.
Yeah,
But
which I
so
always thought was total bullshit. Anytime I had a job where I had to wake up and it was still dark out, I was like, this isn't right.
I completely agree with you completely. So basically, the new law is going to put us in fake time year round. The
Yeah,
new
so
law,
that's just that, and then it's no longer fake time. It's just time.
which is so fucking weird. Um, well, actually, let me get. Can I give it before we get into what the new law might look like? Can I get into where daylight savings time came from? Do you know why we have daylight savings time?
Um, Probably goes back to agrarian roots.
So most people believe that we have daylight savings time because of farmers. So let me read this to you here.
Yeah, that would have been my guess.
Agrarian roots. So let's see. Myth number one: daylight savings time was meant to help farmers. Many of us heard this at some point during elementary school that daylight savings was developed because of farming. The idea that more daylight means more time in the field for farmers continues to get airtime on the occasional local news report and in state legislatures. Farmers wanted it because of extended hours working the field. Let's see. In fact, the inverse is true. Farmers were the reason we have never had a peacetime daylight savings time until 1966. So they had power. They had a powerful lobby and were against it ferociously. They lost an hour in the morning, which meant they had to rush to get their crops to the market during the day. Let's see. And apparently, cows adjust to the time shift rather poorly because obviously cows aren't
Oh, in
setting the
terms of
clock.
like I'm waking up because the farmer is going to like wake up an hour later or
Yeah,
something
so
to milk the cows.
the cow's like still sleeping, and then just one day, farmer shows up early, starts milking the cow. Daylight savings time in this or any other country was never adopted to benefit farmers. It was first proposed by William Willett to the British Parliament in 1907.
Wait, I think I've got the right answer. It has to do with energy savings.
Yes, it was first proposed by William Willett in the British Parliament, 1907, as a way to take advantage of the day's light. Germany was the first country to implement it, and the U.S. took upon that practice in World War One to save energy. And the idea was that we were saving electricity when it came to lighting our homes. So it looks like it was first adopted in World War One to save fuel for electricity. It ended in 1919, just after the war, but then they started it again for World War Two, and then they ended it after World War Two.
Yeah, I guess the idea is like if people are awake when the sun is up and asleep when the sun is down, then they'll need to spend like less energy lighting their home because they're not awake as much when it's dark.
Yeah, that's the general idea. But the fact that it has nothing to do with farms is directly indicated because we were trying to conserve fuel, so basically coal at the time, World War One. And then we stopped it after World War One, reimposed it during World War Two, and then ended after World War Two. The issue was after World War Two, not every county and not every state ended it. So there was different counties in different states that kept their
Well, yeah,
daylight
and that's
savings
still
time.
true today with Arizona. Like parts of Arizona still don't do it.
So in 1966, they passed the Uniform Time Act, and that ever since 1966 has been us observing daylight savings time. So uh,
I feel like it was sometime in the last decade that they changed when it took effect because they didn't like having daylight savings time end just before Halloween because it meant that like the kids going out and trick or treating would be doing it more in the dark than if you let daylight savings time go an extra week or two.
I always remember being a kid and daylight savings time always went into effect just before Halloween,
Now
and
it's
then we
just after.
yeah, now it seems like it is a little bit delayed, but I just remember always trick or treating in the dark and always wanting to trick or treat in the dark, always wanting it to be nighttime when we were out basically dressed up because it was just, I don't know, it fit the mood,
Right.
really.
But from a safety perspective,
From a safety perspective, obviously having children on the street during daylight is better, but it's cooler in the dark.
yeah,
So-
it's especially good if you have a kid wearing an all black outfit and just darting in and out of lanes.
Look, I mean, some things are safer in the light, but I mean, I don't know. Some things are cooler in the dark, and I just think when it comes to Halloween or sex, sometimes
Yeah, I
things
was gonna say I've had a girlfriend too.
sometimes things are cooler in the dark. So, um, especially when you don't have abs. So we'll thank coronavirus for that. But I want to talk about the energy savings. So daylight savings time, does it reduce electricity use? So according to the U.S. Department of Energy, the total savings are relatively small, and this is their official statement. However, they are talking about the 2 months on either end of the daylight savings time, and that's March and October when it comes to saving electricity. However, U.S. Department of Energy, International Association for Energy Economics, the Congressional Research Service, and the National Bureau of Economic Research, the verdict is that while we use less lighting, we actually use more fuel to heat our homes, heat and cool our homes on either end of that. So it actually has a negative, daylight savings time has a negative impact on energy usage.
Oh well, I think the reason why they're doing it is just like people like the sun setting later. People would rather have it be light in the evening than in the morning, I guess.
Well, let me get there. Let's talk about how things are right now. So right now, daylight savings time in the summer, sun comes up on June. What's the summer
June
equinox? June
21st.
21. Sunrise at 5:30 a.m. Sun sets at roughly 8:30 p.m. And
Depends
that's
on where you are.
exactly what I was going to say. And that's depending where you are, because that's kind of the national average. It depends on your latitude, but average is the sun's going to set at 8:30. It's going to rise in the summertime at 5:30, and in the wintertime, the sun is going to rise at 7:19 national average in the morning. I could be a little off on this. I don't remember exactly where I got my source, but I think it's kind of national average. And the sun's going to set in the wintertime, and this is December 21st, the winter solstice. Sun's going to set at 4:30 p.m. So that's how we have it now. Right now, in the summertime, the sun's up at 5:30 in the morning and down at 8:30 at night. Wintertime, sun's up 7:19 in the morning and it sets at 4:30 in the afternoon. That's how I know it. I know in the wintertime it gets dark early. Um, in the summertime, it stays brighter later. Now, the new law, and this is where it gets interesting. The sun will still rise at 5:30 in the morning in the summertime, still set at 8:30 at night in the wintertime. But I'm sorry, still set at 8:30 p.m. in the summertime. In the wintertime, rather than it rising at 7:19 a.m., so if you get up at 7 o'clock in the morning, it's dark. It's actually going to rise. It would rise at 6 in the morning. So say it's December, January. When you wake up, it's going to be bright out. And then the sun's going to set rather than 4:30 in the afternoon. The sun's going to set at 5. I'm so oh fuck. I fucked this up already. Hold up. So in the wintertime, the sun rises at 7:19. So if you wake up at 7 o'clock, it's still dark. With the new law, it's not gonna get the sun's not coming out earlier. The sun's actually gonna rise at 8:30 in the morning. You follow me there?
Yeah,
I
it's
can
going
see
to
your
be darker later in the morning.
Yeah, so if you wake up at 8:30, it's you wake up at 8 o'clock in the morning, it's still going to be pitch black in the wintertime. Yet you're going to have an extra hour in the afternoon. So rather than the sun setting at 4:30, it's going to set at 5:30. What are your thoughts on that? Because I think it's going to be a hell of a lot harder to wake up in the wintertime.
My thoughts are it doesn't matter because I work on West Coast hours, so I wake up at 10:30 in the morning Eastern time most days.
Okay, but pretend you're the everyman, my friend,
No.
and imagine what it's going to be like to wake up on December 21st, and you wake up at 8 o'clock in the morning. It's still pitch black outside.
Um, chances are it's not going to matter because it's also going to be dark when I get home. Because
Well,
if I'm
now-
working like 8 to 5 and the sun's setting at 5:15 or whatever, but like
it's dusk when you get home.
right,
and,
yeah, it's dark either way, so like it doesn't really affect me. Because
So to me, my thinking on this is that it's a traditionalist argument. We're still going to have our late evenings in the summer, yet our winter times, and this is, I think, why people get upset because it gets dark at 4:30 in the wintertime.
yeah, it sucks that like it's pitch black by 5 o'clock.
So
At least in New York it was. It's not like that in South Carolina.
so we're going to be having an hour extra in our summertime, in our winter times.
Yeah.
But the sun comes up an hour later. That's where it gets a little funny for me.
I don't know. Like when I was working in the accounting job and I had to drive into work, even with daylight savings time, if I left my house at like 7:15 or 7:30, very often it was still pretty dark out.
Well, now that's going to be 8 or 8:30.
Yeah, but it would have
What do
been
you-
nice to drive home and it not be dark as well.
Well, and this is where the division is. Do you value that morning time, or do you value the hour at between 4:30 and 5:30 in the afternoon? Now, I'm accustomed to it in the afternoon.
My answer is it doesn't matter to me. Like pick something and just go with it.
Well, you're going to have. I mean, if you maybe you're not going to have to, but I think the average citizen is going to have to feel a certain type of way on one side or the other side of this bill.
I think the public support is overwhelmingly on the side of like extending it year round. So just give the people what they want, and if they don't like it, then change it back. Who cares? It's
Well,
time. Like you
I
can
don't-
just do whatever you want.
I don't think there's once it happens, I don't think there's any changing it back. I think
Yeah, there
once they
is.
do it- Well, I mean, look at
You-
fucking
you-
Brexit.
Yeah, but you pass a bill and you just do it. Like yeah, Brexit's a little bit more difficult to unwind than like how you set your clock.
I mean, for me, in my mind, it's going to be really, really fucking tough to wake up in the wintertime when the sun doesn't come out for another 2 hours after I wake up. So they're proving their point with how it's harmful. There's bad health effects, and why it's bad for people. The current system. And
So,
I'm gonna
All right,
read
so
to you the
here-
app.
like here, I'm just gonna give you some polling. This is 2 weeks old.
Okay.
So the national average is time setting preference. 1, keep the clock changes, so keep the system that we already have, 35%. Year round earlier, so that would be standard time, 13%. Year round later, 44%. So the plurality of people prefer year round daylight savings time and 35%, so 44% year-round daylight savings time. 35% keep the system we have where we switch the clocks twice a year. And only 13% like standard time year-round.
Yeah, no, most people prefer the savings time year round, which keeps the wintertime brighter later.
Yeah, that's what the peoples want.
And I mean, I don't know. I kind of like wintertime being dark and it being cozy. And I think of being in Sweden where you have 4 hours of daylight during the daytime, and you get this kind of cozy blanket time, hot chocolate, movie time, relaxing.
Yeah, and then you get seasonal affective disorder and they're depressed for 4 months.
Well, that's why they tax liquor so much in Sweden.
That's
But,
a pyramid scheme if I ever heard one.
but I like that kind of, hygge is? You heard of hygge?
Yeah.
Hyggge.
Yeah.
And that's a cozy feeling, the curling up with some hot chocolate.
You know what gives me a cozy feeling? Sunlight. It's nice and warm on the outside, warm on the inside.
But look, so a lot of the rationale that they're using to keep daylight savings time, so basically to have our fake time year round, which, like you said, will become real time.
But it's all fake time. Like, there's no such thing as real time.
And that's why I kind of gave that example of the tides coming in now, because they're really not. It's the land going into the tide. But they're saying that there are negative health effects because of these changes. So I want to read.
You know what? Here's a crazy idea. How about just don't have a job where you have to be at work so long that if you're living at a normal latitude, like, yeah, sure, if you're in Sweden, like, and it's only sunny for 4 hours of the day, then yeah, it might be dark, like, when you go home and when you go to work. But for most places that get like the normal 12 or so hours of sunlight, like, how about we just don't have jobs where it's dark when you go in and it's dark when you leave?
How about we just don't have jobs and there's universal basic income?
Okay, well,
I think you up on your podium telling people they can choose what to the McDonald's worker, who works the breakfast shift. That's really demeaning, James. Not everybody. What are they going to work at Wendy's and try to work the lunch shift? That's not. Not everybody has options like that.
Rosh says we should just print our own money. I'm pretty sure that's what crypto's trying to do.
So, also the U.S.
Well, the U.S. doesn't have to try. That's what they do.
So, look, I want to read you the abstract on this article about daylight savings time, measurable health effects associated with daylight savings time. And I read a few articles, but this is one that I think kind of has the most data-driven backing. So I'm going to read you real quickly. It's a little small on my screen, so just bear with me. The transition to daylight savings time is beneficial for any energy conservation, but at the same time, it has been reported to increase the risk of cerebrovascular and cardiovascular problems. Here we evaluate the effect of DST, daylight savings time shift, on a whole spectrum of diseases. An analysis we hope will be helpful in weighing the risks and benefits of daylight savings time shift. Our study relied on population-based cross-sectional analysis by the IBM Watson Health Market Scan Insurance Claim Dataset.
Okay, get to the results.
Which incorporates over 150. I'm giving you the data back on this. Which incorporates over 150 million unique patients in the U.S. and the Swedish National Inpatient Register, which incorporates more than 9 million unique Swedes.
All right, so there's plenty of data.
For hundreds of sex and age-specific diseases, we assessed the effects of daylight savings shifts towards forward and backwards 1 hour in spring and autumn by comparing and observing the expected diagnosis rates after daylight saving time.
Hurry up to the results.
We found 4 prominent elevated risk clusters, including cardiovascular disease, such as heart attacks, injuries, mental and behavioral disorders, and immune-related diseases such as non-infective enteritis and colitis to be significantly associated with daylight saving shifts in the U.S. and Sweden. While the majority of disease risk elevations are modest, a considerable number of diseases exhibited in an approximately 10% of the relative risk increase.
All right, so why would that be?
Well, my concern is, are there other factors outside of the time? Could it be temperature related, season related, or is it the fact that we're just making shifts?
Yeah, it could. I mean, I would have to think that the only logical explanation there would be that you're getting less sleep and your body's overall more stressed because you're not adjusted to the time.
But what how long does daylight savings play out? How long does your when you take a long distance flight and you're jet lagged, how long does that play out for?
Couple days.
Some say it can take up to a couple of weeks. But even at a couple of weeks, is that long enough to have serious negative health impacts?
Yeah, sleep deprivation is one of the most unhealthy things you can do.
On what scale? On a 2-week scale or on a 3-day scale?
Well, it gets worse the longer you do it, but like the effects of sleep deprivation start to show themselves pretty quickly.
I don't know. I think
I don't know. I'm biased here because sleep is one of my favorite things.
I'm super jealous actually on the fact that I assumed right off the bat that you probably didn't watch the Oscars, and then two that you take regular naps and get a hell of a lot more sleep.
I didn't watch the Oscars. I just saw the clip because it was unavoidable.
Dude, it was so unavoidable. I'm upset. The number every time that comes across a screen that I'm paying attention to, I get really mad because celebrity news is in my opinion like the absolute worst news. It would be. It's in my opinion.
Yeah, it's not news. It's mindless bullshit to distract us.
I mean, if I had a neighbor that was 7 houses down in my community that like got in a fight, like I don't give a fuck, And the way that I look at celebrity news is just because somebody did a movie 4 years ago or did a popular movie this year, their relationship and their friendships and all their interpersonal bullshit is none of my goddamn business.
Yeah, think about how horrible it would be to be a celebrity, and anytime you go out in public, there are people taking pictures of you.
I think that is
and I'm not talking about professionals, like the paparazzi, which is like another level of terrible.
Yeah,
I'm just talking about
Tom Cruise. That's Tom Cruise, but you're talking about just the regular celebrity, everyman celebrity.
Like, what I'm talking about is if you're a celebrity, like sure, having like the paparazzi hound you is really bad, and I think that's worse than what I'm saying, but it's less constant than like if you just go to the grocery store and people say, "Oh my God, it's Justin," and like are sneaking pictures of you grocery shopping.
So I actually hired this service. This is a little fucked up, but I hired a service to not manage. They basically controlled my. They didn't control. They had to log into my Instagram account, and I gave them a number of hashtags, and they were to like those hashtags, and it was strictly business related. It was like NYC apartment, NYC apartment broker, NYC real estate agent. There was maybe a dozen. No, there was probably a little more than a dozen, and somebody recognized me on the street, and I had no idea who they were. And they're like, "Oh, hey, it's me, somebody, so and so." And I was like, "I don't know who you are." She's like, "Oh, but you like all my pictures." So what the service did was it liked every picture that had that hashtag, and this person like posted all the time. And to me, I was like, "Oh, this is I have to stop this service. This is very weird. I don't like being called out in the street, and somebody thinks they know me. I don't have any idea who they are."
Yeah. So imagine if that happened to you every day, everywhere you went.
And the weird
you walk
thing
down
about
the street and most people turn their heads, and like some people take out their cell phone and take a picture of you.
The weird thing about celebrity,
and all you're doing is walking down the street.
The weird thing about celebrity is that people, and I've had this in running a business. I know many people. Obviously, I'm no celebrity, but I know a lot of people who know me or know of me before we meet. And the weird thing about celebrity is that it becomes an extreme, and that people develop an opinion of you, and they believe that they know you to the core before they've ever met you. So if I meet somebody,
it's called a parasocial relationship.
So yeah, that's exactly what it is. So if I meet somebody for the first time, maybe I've heard about them before. I have, either I've never heard about them before, and they are directly influential in my opinion of them, or I've heard about them and there are other aspects that influence my my understanding of who they are at the core. But I mean, me, I want to meet everybody on an individual level. And there are people that I'm super close friends with that other people are like, oh, that person's a dick. Oh, that person's such an asshole. I'm like, no, actually, they've been very nice to me. Your perspective with them. But right. And the thing about celebrity is that people, one, they believe they know all about you. And then two, they also believe that they know you. And then to a weird degree, because they know you owe them something. And then if you don't deliver on that, then you're the asshole.
Let me ask you a question. Have you ever had like a full-fledged conversation with a celebrity?
Good question. Yeah, probably at some point in the past, because I was involved in the New York City acting.
And not like an interview, and not like you saying like, "Oh, I've seen your work," but like an actual conversation that you would have in a similar way that like we have conversations.
So there have been some times that I've been in rooms with some very some high profile people,
And you don't need to name them.
no, but I also don't want to go into too much detail as to how I ended up in those situations. And usually, I'm not super like aware of these things. Like I was, one time I didn't know this. I was dating somebody, and I was in line at the movies and having a conversation with the person in front of me in line. I got some popcorn and left. They're like, "Do you know who that was?" I was like, "No, I have no idea. We were just talking about popcorn and long lines and who would think there'd be a line at the movie theater." I didn't have any idea. But where are you going with this? Because I haven't, I'm not a big. Usually, when there's a celebrity around, I am totally not driven towards that person, because the idea of celebrity isn't something that attracts me. So where are you going with this?
Um, my sample size is probably smaller than yours, but and won't say who it was that I had this conversation with, but I had probably a 4 or 5 hour long conversation with a celebrity that everybody would recognize. And
I know this person, right?
you know, but please don't say the name.
No worries.
Um, and it was one where it was when I was working in hotels, and he was staying at the hotel, and like he asked me for a bottle of wine, so I got that for him, and then like I was working night audit, so I had nothing to do, so he started talking to me. I was like, all right, cool, I'll talk to this guy, and it wasn't until like 20 or 30 minutes in that like he told me who he was. And then like it clicked, and I was like, "Oh, I know who you are. Like I've seen tons of your movies." Um, and I think the fact that he knew that I wasn't looking to talk to him because of the celebrity, because I was talking to him before I knew who he was what made the conversation interesting to him. Because he's probably gotten so accustomed to people talking to him because of who he is, instead of actually being interested in what he has to say.
And I think that's very, very well said. Is that there's this just fucking weird thing with celebrity, and it just fucking skews everything. Because I want to get back to like the news perspective about how we report celebrities and celebrity life, and about whether Kim Kardashian's daughter is going to a public school or a charter school or a private school.
That's also perverse, especially like kids of celebrities need to be left the fuck alone.
I agree with you completely. I don't talk too much about my personal life on the podcast, because I don't think it plays any role in the podcast.
And you know who I have to give credit for too? How many times have you heard anything in the news about the Obama's kids?
Yeah, very, very seldomly.
Like
And less so. Less. What are the names?
Sasha and Malia, I think.
Yeah, Sasha Malay. Less so them than Chelsea Clinton. And Chelsea
Yeah.
Clinton stepped into the limelight intentionally, and her parents allowed her to, and gave her a bit of a, they propped her up a little bit, because that was her prerogative. But the Obamas, like, I believe they're living relatively normal lives, and they've been.
I know nothing about their kids, and that's great.
One or two I think one or both of them have done some dumb stuff in college, but
But that's what college is for.
yeah, right. Like that's it, and it's funny to me to give somebody such a hard time for doing something dumb when they're at a college party and they're a little hammered. To me, that's somebody didn't do that. We're not
Yeah, that's
talking.
why you go to college is to make those
Hun-
mistakes then.
Yeah, we're not talking Hunter Biden, where you know, or where you spend 3 decades of your life high on cocaine.
Yeah,
But
if you're just drunk and do something stupid at a college party, like as long as you're not actually hurting somebody, then like all right, cool, learn your lesson. Like don't do that again.
we lost track of the topic here. But look,
But we were
are
talking
we
about
missing?
celebrity. Like the whole idea that celebrity news is even in the news is stupid. And I think like people talk about wanting to be rich and famous. I don't want the second part.
No, the fame thing is weird. The fame thing, I think I would much rather a reputation for myself. I would much rather drop by a restaurant that I've been to a dozen times before, and the people at the door, or, the maitre d' recognize me because I've been there a few times and I treated them well. Then walk into a place where people bend over backwards because they think they know who I am, and it's just kind of fake lip service.
Yeah. Um, I think there was another like also when I was in hotels, there was a celebrity that wanted to book with us that we turned down. We said we'd rather you not stay with us, and that was purely based on his reputation, just from like his on-air personality. And again, not going to say who this is, but it was someone who had an on-air personality of being confrontational and mean, and like the manager of my hotel says, I'd rather not have my staff have to deal with that for 3 or 4 days. And whether or not and whether that person was like that in real life or if that was just an act that he did for the show that he was on, I can't say. But thinking about it, like it's pretty weird to say like we're basing our decision whether or not to book you based purely on how you portray yourself on TV, which may very well be an act.
That's the other thing. It's like imagine actors that their lifetime of work is playing the bad guy.
Yeah, and like the celebrity that I'm talking about was not Gordon Ramsay, but if you think like Gordon Ramsay on American shows is like this flaming asshole because that's the character that he plays, but in real life he's not like that at all.
No, I imagine actually Gordon Ramsay's pretty, as long as you're not crazy around him. But again, that's what celebrity, the idea of
Yeah,
celebrity
but
tends to
so like
attract.
for the American TV audience, that's the role that he plays because that's what he kind of cast for himself. But that's not who he is.
Well, look, I think it's time we wind down. I think I gotta send a warning flare, James.
Hmm?
I think you got to be careful, man. A couple more episodes of Sip Talk, and you could be dealing with some real personal celebrity issues.
Well, yeah, well that would involve me having to leave the house.
No, I'm saying you could be the paparazzi. A couple more episodes, man. The
Yeah, they'll
paparazzi
be
could be.
staked out and all along Shadow Moss Plantation, waiting to see if I get my mail on the day.
Look, on
It'd
that
be like
note,
Groundhog's Day. Like, does he even show his face?
I'm gonna bid everyone a farewell. Say hi to Pocahontas and Elhan Zilkic on Instagram, and Sally Howdziel on TikTok. But I want to thank you guys for joining. Don't forget, guys, you're watching us now. You can subscribe on YouTube or any of the audio podcast platforms: Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Anchor. I don't know. There's a couple others. You can catch us on there. We really appreciate you guys being involved in the podcast. We really like your questions because the questions that you send us help give us some content and you give us more shit to talk about. So
Yeah, the more you throw out there, the more we'll have to respond to.
So, all right. On that note, James, can you hang out one more minute after we cut?
Mm-hmm.
All right. And I'm going to end everybody live. We will see you next time. Thanks for coming. Rosh Galeb in the background also sharing your live comments with us. Without him, we wouldn't know you were here. So thank you, Rosh. Adios, everyone.
All right, that concludes this episode of Sip Talk. If you made it this far, I would greatly appreciate a follow, a like, a comment, an interaction in any way, shape, or form would be nice. James would like that too. And if you really did make it this far and you haven't contributed by liking, commenting, or sharing this podcast, come on. All right, I'll see you guys next time. Adios.
I like PBR. I just got priced out of it.